If you've never used Photoshop before, in this video I'm going to show you some of the basics of the application, such as creating a new document, using some of the tools and changing their options, navigating around the workspace, and then finally how to save a document and then open it again later. Now, these steps and processes can also be used throughout the whole Adobe Creative Cloud suite, so you'll find that some of these things will be the same as you go through different applications of Adobe. So to begin, we're going to create a new document, and you can do that one of two ways. If you're on the welcome screen, you can click the Create New button, and that will open up the new document window for you. Or you can go to the top and click on File, and then select New. Whenever you do that, that will open the new document window for us. Now, if we have saved any items, you will find them here, or you can pick any of the presets at the top. Now, for this document, we're going to go ahead and set up our own options and settings. So the first thing that we'll want to do is name the document. Now, since this is a lesson on navigating Photoshop, I'll just call this navigation. Now, you can call it anything that you would like. For the dimensions, we want to set the width and height. Currently, it's reading as inches, which is great if you're doing anything in print. However, if we're working for, say, the web, we will want to use pixels. So let's go ahead and change the pixel dimension. And then you can see that it converts the width and height from the inches to the pixels for us. Now, I just want to match this to a standard HD video, high definition video, which you'll find in most monitors. So I'm going to highlight the width and just change this to 1920 and change the height to 1080, which is the standard 1080 high definition dimensions. Now you can change the orientation, make it either vertical or horizontal. You can do some artboards, which we can talk about later on, and then you can set the resolution. Now this is how densely the pixels are per inch and how crisp and clear the image will look. So typically if you're working with print, you'll want 300, which is what it was set to, but if you're working for web, you want to keep this number a little lower and make it look good, so you reduce file size. So we're just going to change that to 72, and then we'll leave the color mode to RGB and 8-bit, and then we can say how do we want the background to look. So do we want to start off with a white background? We can pick this, and actually if you drag this down, you can see there's more options. So we can have a black background, we can pick a certain color, we can have a transparent background, and we can click a custom background. Now it starts off with white. If you're used to other versions of Photoshop, you might be used to picking a transparent background, and you can select that right here. But we'll just start off with white, and then we'll hit the Create button. That opens up the main workspace of Photoshop where we can begin working. You can see it's created our image, and this is in the high def 1920 by 1080 size. However, we're currently zoomed out. We're actually not filling up the whole screen. If we were to be at 100%, this would take up my screen perfectly, and that's not the case. Now, if you look at the top, you'll see a tab, and it says Navigation at 66.7% RGB 8. So that's the name of the document, Navigation. This is how much we're zoomed in, so we're at 66.7%, and also RGB color mode with 8-bit depth color, so that just gives us some color information. At the bottom, you will also see a zoom number, so it shows 66.67% here, and then gives some information about the document also. Now, if your workspace looks a little different than mine, it's because I've set up my own workspace and I've saved it under my name. So by going up to the top, you can go to Window and you can go to Workspace. And here you can see I've created my own workspace, which I've set up my own tabs and panels that I want. You might want to use the Essentials workspace when starting out, just because it might be a little easier to follow along. But if you can't find any of the panels that I'm using, you'll find them down here. So if I'm using something like, say, the histogram, and you don't see that, you can click on histogram and that will open it up on the panel side to the right. So let's take a look at those panels. Right now we have an info panel, but then we have a properties panel. If we click on the properties panel, it will actually give us information about the document. So here you can see it says width 26.667 inches and height 15 inches, and our resolution that we set 72 pixels per inch. Now we wanted to work in pixels, but this is showing inches, and that's because it's done in a setting or a preference inside of Photoshop that we might want to go ahead and change if we're working in pixels and not for print. So let's go up to the top and go to Edit, and then go down to Preferences, and then go over to Units and Rulers and select that button. And then here you can see it says our units for our rulers are done in inches, and that's really not what we want. Let's go ahead and click that and change that to pixels. And then whenever we're working with the properties or any information, it'll be pixels. Now, if you're working for print, of course, you might want to leave that to inches or select one of the metrics down here. We can leave everything else the same for now, the type and the new document preset resolutions and all this. We'll just go ahead and leave that, but we want to set that rulers to pixels, and we'll hit OK. And then when we do, you can see it's showing the dimensions, 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels, and that's what we created this document as, and at 72 pixels per inch. So we have our document created and set up, ready to go. So now I just want to show you how you can select and change some options of some tools inside of Photoshop and how you can kind of get around the workspace as you begin working. So on the left hand side, you will see our toolbar, and we have a number of different tools. And by hovering over these tools, it will give you the name, it'll show you an actual example of the tool, and it will show the shortcut key that you can use. So this says the lasso tool with the shortcut key L makes freehand selections, and then it gives you a little demonstration. Now, if you're not seeing the demonstration, you might be using an older version of Photoshop. I'm currently using Adobe Photoshop CC 2019. So if we go down to the next one, you can see this is the quick selection tool with the shortcut key W, makes a selection by finding and following the edges in an image. And then we can go down to some of these other ones, maybe the type tool, horizontal type tool, shortcut key T, adds horizontal type. Now, I highly recommend that you learn any shortcut keys that you can as you begin working in Photoshop. What's great about the Adobe platform is a lot of the shortcut keys are actually the same throughout different programs. So you'll find similarities of the way that things work in different Adobe applications, such as Illustrator or maybe XD or InDesign. So let's go ahead and use one of these tools, and we'll just start off by using the brush tool. So it's about midway down, and it looks like a little paintbrush in the icon, and it says brush tool B paints custom brush strokes. Now you also see that there's a little arrow, and that shows that there's more options inside of this button, this icon here. So if I click and hold down, you will see not only do we have a brush tool, but we also have a pencil tool, a color replacement tool, and a mixer brush tool, and they all use the same shortcut key B. So you can use B to cycle through these different tools. Let's just start with the brush tool, and you'll see that we have a little tiny circle. So whenever I pick a different tool, you'll see that my icon changes. If I pick the move tool, you'll see a cursor with a little compass showing that we're in the move tool. If I do a selection tool, it'll look more like a target. And if I pick the brush tool, you'll see it's a little circle. It's an actual brush that we're going to paint with. Now we can change the options at the top under the options bar. So every tool has a different set of options. For instance, if I select the selection tool, those options change. If I pick, let's pick the type tool, you'll see that it changes to type options. So every one of these is going to have a different set of options up there, and this is where you can change them. So go ahead and pick the brush tool, and you'll see that one of the first options looks like a little circle with a number underneath it. This is actually your brush settings. If we click on this box, it'll show you the different brushes. So we have a size, we have a hardness, we have different presets, and a ton of different presets with icons that you can choose down here, which is really great. So let's go ahead and change the size. So if you click this slider, and you'll see sliders often in these programs, these allow you to move values up and down very easily. So we can pick a different brush size. If we hover over our document, we can see our circle has gotten bigger because our brush size has gotten bigger. We can also click in this box and change an option. So if we want to just type in 200, it moves the slider automatically for us, and we can have that bigger brush. So we can just click outside of the document, and then you can just click down and hold and start painting with the brush tool. Now, if you want to undo this at any point, you can go up to the top and go to Edit. You will see that there is a Undo Brush Tool option with a shortcut key Control-Z, or if you're using Mac OS, it would be Command-Z. So we can select that and it will undo that for us. Now, I actually, when I selected outside of the document, it actually did a little bit of the edge right here. I don't know if you can see, it's a little darker at the corner right here, and I want to undo that too. So I'm going to hit Control-Z and it will undo that option for me. So anytime that we want to work and undo that, we can hit Control-Z or Command-Z, and it will undo that for us if we make any mistakes. So now we can go back up to the top and we can click on our brush settings button to pull up our brushes, or we can use the panel that I set up under my document. So if you go to Window, there's actually a brush settings and a brushes panel, and I've already loaded that up on the right hand side, and you can see the two brushes here. So if I select those, I get a much bigger workspace to select these and view them, so I like to use the panel for this. So just go down and find a brush that looks really neat to you. Now I might have some brushes in here that you don't have that I've already loaded up. So for instance, I have this Scattered Leaves one that I'm going to select. And when I go out into the document, it looks like I have a really small cursor. I don't even know if you can see that on your screen. I'm going to click and drag, but however, when I do that, now my brush is this really neat scattered leaves effect. So the brush gives you a bunch of different options and a bunch of different things that you can do inside of Photoshop. And it's not just for painting. You can actually erase with a brush too. So if you go to the Tools panel on the left-hand side, you'll see that we have the Eraser tool, the Background Eraser tool, and the Magic Eraser tool. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Eraser tool, and I'm going to pick that Scattered Leaves again, and now I can actually erase part of the document with that brush, or I can pick another one. So let me just go up and pick one of these hard brushes. Now I can erase with the brush using different brushes. So you'll find out that you'll actually use brushes a lot inside of Photoshop, and they're just really neat to have and work with. I'm going to go ahead and close this panel out. And you can see on the left-hand side, there are a bunch of different tools that you can use, and each one of these will tell you a little bit about them. So I'm not going to go over all the tools right now, but definitely take a look at them, take a minute to go through and read them and see what the different things are. Some are for selecting, some are for manipulating the Photoshop interface or window, some are for painting or doing really cool effects. This one's for typing and so forth. So at the bottom, we have the hand tool and we have the zoom tool. And what these tools do is they allow us to work around the workspace inside of Photoshop, and it allows us to have a better view of the actual workspace. So let's go ahead and pick this magnifying glass. This is the zoom tool. And when we do, you can see that the cursor is a magnifying glass with a plus. Now, if we click one time, we will zoom in on the document. And you can see at the top, before it said 66%, now we're at 100%. So we're seeing the 100% of the actual window. And that is shown at the bottom too, the 100%. But what if we need to edit over in the left-hand corner, or we want to get over there to see what the image looks like? Well, then we would use this little hand, which is called the hand tool. And it basically allows us to pan the workspace. So if I click and drag, what is happening is I'm not moving anything on the workspace. I'm just moving my view of the workspace so that I can see better. So that means I can come through and see different parts of this document. Maybe I want to get a little more fine detail. I can pick that zoom tool again, and I can click on the document, and wherever you click is actually where it's going to zoom in on. So if I want to zoom in on this area right here, I can click and it'll start zooming toward that area. Then I can pick that hand tool again, and I can move around this document. Now if you want to zoom out, you can pick that zoom tool, and you can go to the top, and there's a magnifying glass in the options bar with a minus. If we select that, now I can click and this will zoom out for us. And I can keep zooming out more and more. So here we're at 25%, so I can see that picture a lot better. Something else that you'll probably want to learn and use is the shortcut key for zooming in and out. And that is by holding the control button on Windows or the command button on Mac OS, and then hitting the plus sign to zoom in. And to zoom out, you just hold down Control or Command and hit the minus sign. And that's going to zoom in and out for us. What's great about this is it allows us to not have to pick a tool. So if we go back to our brush tool, and I'm working in this space, then I can hit Control plus, and I zoomed in. However, I never left that tool. I still have that tool, so I can start working. And then I can zoom out, and I can continue working. And then I can zoom out some more, and I can maybe work over here some. And so it allows us to keep using the tool and not have to leave that tool, so that we can zoom in and out by holding Control or Command and hitting plus to zoom in or minus to zoom out. We can also do the same thing with the hand tool by holding the space bar. So let me zoom in a couple times here, and you can see we're at 200% by looking at the tab. So we're zoomed in twice as much. Now I can use this brush tool here, and then if I hold the space bar, it turns it into the hand tool. And so that means that I can actually move around this workspace. When I let go, it goes back to my brush, and I can make some adjustments and then hit space and use my hand and work over here and so forth. And then when I'm done and I want to zoom out and not leave the brush tool, I hit Control or Command and hit the minus sign, and that'll zoom out to 100%. Let's go back to our 66.7%. So that's how you navigate around the workspace while staying in those tools. That's using Control or Command plus, Control or Command minus, and the space bar. Learn those shortcuts now, because it'll save you a lot of time instead of going over and actually picking these tools to zoom in and out. So finally, let me show you how to save and open up a document, just so you know how to do that in the future if you need to. So if we go to the top, we can go to File, and then we can click on Save. You can see there's a shortcut key, Control or Command S to save, which is another one you might want to learn as you work in the document. You want to save often. So by knowing that shortcut Control S, you can continually hit that and make sure you're saving your document all the time. But I'm just going to go ahead and click on this. And then you can navigate to the folder where you would like to save this document. So here I'm in this Navigation and Tools Files folder, and we can give it a name. So we're just going to call it what we name the document, Navigation. And you can see that the extension is a PSD file. That is a Photoshop document file. So what happens is we're not saving this as an image. We're saving this as the ability to come back into this file and open it up later on. So you can click on the Save As Type, and then you can have a lot more options such as images. So here you can see we can save as a BMP file, a JPG file, or all these other different files, PNG, Targa, TIFFs, and some other different ones here too. But we're just going to save it as a Photoshop document for now, so that we can access this document later on and work on it if we need to. So I'll just go ahead and click Save. And now it has saved the name as navigation.psd. So if I ever need to close and reopen this document, I can do that. So let's go ahead and hit this little X button here to X out of this document. You can see we're back on the home screen, and it's showing our recent documents. So we actually have that. We can click on it right here, or we can click on the Open button on the left-hand side, or we can go to the top and go to File, Open. So we'll open up the file. We were already in this folder, so it's just brought that back for us. We can select the navigation.psd document and then hit Open, and there's our file, so we can continue working on it. So hopefully that gives you a little brief overview of how you might work around Photoshop and use some of the tools, navigate the workspace, and create new documents, save them out, and then open them for later on.